Hey guys, tonight what I wanted to do was I wanted to make your traditional sticky buns. My dad, when I was a kid, he would take us to a place called the Q Mart. It was a flea market, I guess is what you would call it nowadays. I don't know. I didn't know what it was called back then, but I had so much fun. They had little tiny stores in there where they would make like homemade fries and like a homemade cheese sauce. They had sticky buns. They were super delicious. They had bingo. They had all the stuff like nowadays kids would be like, that is so cheesy. But when I was a kid, it was so much fun. So I found a recipe. It was from, if you have a YouTube channel that you like to watch, I love watching Anna Olson. She is fantastic. She has a channel called Oh Yum with Anna Olson, and she is awesome. Now, some of her recipes are more complex, but some of them are just downright awesome. And this is one, and I will link it down below, but this is a recipe that is great, and I love it, and I found it as a no-fail. I am going to be honest with you. I do not typically make her dough recipe, ever. I have a sourdough recipe that I typically make my bread with. I will use that sourdough recipe. I will make one loaf of bread with that, and then the rest for the other loaf I will put aside, and I will make my pizza dough with that. I will make cinnamon rolls. I will make the sticky buns with that. So anything that I don't need a second loaf of bread with, I will typically use the sourdough. Or I will do my yeast bread, and I will make one loaf of bread with the yeast bread, and then the second loaf, instead of doing a loaf of bread, I will make the same stuff with. But tonight, just because I'm doing her recipe and not making my own recipe, and I'm going to link hers below, I haven't done it in a really, really long time. So I'm hoping and praying it's going to work. And I only say that because I am using fresh ground flour. So with that, her recipe is done with all-purpose flour, so it's done. And when you're doing it, you can use this exact recipe with all-purpose flour. Now, when you use it, you can watch her video, and hers only takes a few seconds of spinning it. It'll come up on your dough hook beautifully. I have done it with all-purpose flour, probably a couple years ago, and that it works like magic. It's up the dough hook within a few seconds, and you're done. When you're working with all-purpose flour, I had questions on my video this past week on Facebook. So ladies, they want to know, without adding the gluten to the bread recipe, what do you have to do? Okay, you have to mix it a long time. It's a long time. In a stand mixer, if you have a stand mixer, even if it's a Bosch, you have to mix it 10 to 15 minutes. That's going to release the gluten into the bread, and I only know this from self-experience, because when I first made my first loaves of bread, if I didn't mix it for 10 to 15 minutes, if I'd have thrown that thing at you, I probably could have killed you. So you have to mix it 10 to 15 minutes in your stand mixer. If you are hand kneading that bread, give it a good 20-25 minutes, and I mean steady kneading that bread. And I know I've done it. So hand mixer, you've got to mix them 10 to 15 minutes. It's going to take your fresh ground flour, and it's going to release that gluten. That is the only way that is going to release the natural gluten without having to add gluten to your bread to make it rise. So you will not have to add gluten if you give it enough time in your mixer for it to rise. Now, with that said, I was also asked, what kind of flour am I using? I am using a mix. I am using hard red, and I'm using hard white mixed. I like the hard red. Some people say it's too strong. I like the hard white. The only time that I use soft white wheat, because I do have that as well, I will use that in biscuit mix when I'm making my biscuits, and I will use that in cookies. anytime you're using, I have spelt flour as well. Anytime you're making cookies, you can use spelt cookies. You can use soft white wheat. You can use it for any of that because that stuff does not have to rise. Anything you're making like a bread, you need it to rise. You need to use your hard reds, your hard whites, things like that. But tonight, with this, with her dough, I only use the hard red, hard white wheat berries. They're the actual berries. I ground it up. I do not have a really good mock mill. I do not have a Como mill. I have the attachment, the KitchenAid attachment that I put right on my stand mixer. And I'm gonna hopefully one day get a better one that's gonna grind it better down. I did sift my wheat for this recipe for the purpose of making this. I did sift it. I did sift it for my bread recipe. Normally, I do not. In a normal bread recipe, I do not sift it. You do not have to get it to rise. You do not have to sift it, I repeat. It's not necessary. If you, 10 to 15 minutes you mix it, you don't have to sift it. And with all that bran in there, it's really good for you. But anyway, moving on to this recipe. Now her recipe calls for 1 1/4 cup of 2% milk at just above your body temperature. What that is it's 105 degrees Fahrenheit. I mean, if you don't have a temperature gauge, who cares? Just a little bit warm. 1 1/4 cup of milk. So this is 1/4 cup of unsalted melted butter. Then here I have 1/4 cup of sugar. And then I have here is my 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast. I've got my 1 farm fresh egg at room temperature. And then here I have my 3 1/2 cups. Now this, it's supposed to be all-purpose flour. This is fresh ground, sifted flour. This is my hard red and hard white wheat. And then the last thing I'm going to be adding here, 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. And then you're just going to put on your dough hook. And let it go. Like I said, I'm going to let this go about 10 minutes. So in about 10 minutes, we'll come back and we'll see how this is doing. And I'll show you my dough. So while this is mixing, we're just going to go ahead and get our filling ready. And what we've got to do is we've got some cinnamon and some brown sugar. We need 2/3 cup of brown sugar, 3 tablespoons of melted butter, and 1 tablespoon of cinnamon. So all this is going to do is it's going to smooth over top of it, and then we're just going to mix the cinnamon and brown sugar together. I normally don't use this brown sugar. I normally have a low glycemic brown sugar, one that's used of natural sweeteners, not the fake sugars, things like that. I will go ahead and put a picture up here of the one that I normally use and put a link below that you can actually order from. Normally I'll get it from Amazon. When I was in Texas, I would actually get it from H-E-B, normally has it. But I will go ahead and show it to you. But right now, my kids will be able to eat this and it'll work for them. But this is all you do for your inside fillings. And then once this is done, which is just about finished, we'll be able to go ahead and put this on top and when it's done rising. And that's it. All right, we just got a little bit of time from there. We'll see what it looks like. Looks pretty good. Okay guys, I figured that while we were waiting, we would go ahead and get started on the goo. We got half a cup of butter, half a cup of maple syrup, and 1 cup of brown sugar. So anyway, what you're looking for here is, once that's all dissolved there, it looks good, that's fine. But you want it to come to a full rapid boil. All right, we're getting pretty close. Here it comes. So this is the stage in which you're looking for. You got your rapid boil. I'm going to turn this off. And we're going to actually pour this into our pan. We're going to pour this right into here. Now that's all ready, and we're going to go check on our mixing dough. Okay, so it's been about 10 minutes, and this is what we got. This is more of a dough that is stickier with all the milk and the butters. It's not like your bread dough. So it definitely is stickier. All you really have to do is wet your hands. I found that with this kind of bread wheat, if you wet your hands versus putting flour on your hands, it doesn't stick as bad. That's just from my experience. You may have found something different, and I will show you what I'm going to do. Let me see. So all I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take it and do it like you normally would your regular bread and roll it up into a ball. Stick it back into my bowl. And I'm going to just cover this up with plastic wrap, and we're going to let this sit for 1 hour. Once it's sat for an hour, we'll move on to our next step, and I'll be right back with you. We're just going to be rolling it out into a square. So you're just spreading it out as far as you can, kind of like you would be spreading out a sourdough. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take your butter, and you're going to be rolling it out, rubbing it out on here. And then you're going to be taking your cinnamon and sugar, and you're going to spread it out evenly. You can put anything on these that you want. This is just your basic cinnamon roll. Normally what I put on them is I put like your raisins, or you can put your pecans on here, walnuts. Smooth that out. And you just take this. You don't need to pull and stretch. You just kind of naturally roll it up. I do a little bit of a tightness, but not a lot. That's that. You're going to cut it in half again, and in half again. Alright guys, so this is the next morning. I went and I got these right directly out of my fridge. We're going to go ahead, we're going to put these into the oven. It's a cold oven. I didn't even have it turned on yet, so it's going to go in for 350 degrees for 45 minutes. Now you normally get 12 individually cut rolls out of this. I did do mine thicker, so these are, because they're thicker, I might have to run these for about 50 to 55 minutes, but normally it's 350 for 45 minutes in a cold oven when you do it the next morning. Now if you were to have cooked these yesterday, it would have been letting these rise for 1 hour, and once they rose for an hour, then you would put them in a preheated 350 degree oven for 45 minutes. So here we go. You get to see. I'm so excited. Alright guys, so this was 48 minutes that it took to get done. They're a little golden brown more than I'd like, but hey, it works. Then what you're going to do is just, I have a jelly roll pan here. I'm hoping that it fits over top of my glass bowl. We'll see. If not, you can also take a cutting board and put it right on top of your cutting board and flip it out onto it. And then you're going to get your goo sliming over top. So let's see. Alrighty. And flip it. So here we have it. You got your sticky buns. Should be able to flip that on. Now mine, the glass bowl was too big on the side, so I had to turn it to the side and flip it out, and then it still slid off a little bit, and I had to get it back to center. But other than that, you've got your cinnamon rolls, and they'll be able to have all the liquid and juice and everything. Now these, like I said, I didn't put the raisins and nuts in them like I normally do. These are just your simple standard kind. If you do, just roll your raisins and stuff out when you put that on the inside like you normally would. So yeah, it's an easy, simple recipe. It's a no-fail recipe, really. If you do have any problems with it, feel free to get a hold of me. It's really a very simple recipe. It goes well. It tastes great. And I've never, ever had a problem with it. It's really delicious. Everybody loves it. I brought these to family before, and they all loved them. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, if you want help with this, just let me know. You can always visit us on Facebook, or you can email me at wilsonacreshomestead@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good day.